The anti-terror campaign in Syria and Iraq is pushing Islamic State militants to look for a new foothold, which they've apparently found in Libya. The new ISIL stronghold in the country is now in the northern town of Sirte. Worryingly, its location is just across the Mediterranean from the coasts of Europe. The number of militants there has risen from 200 fighters a year ago to some 5,000 today. The group has already established strict Sharia law and carried out several public executions. EU leaders have started sounding the alarm over the new neighbors.
We must put in place in Libya what they've been waiting for a long time, which is the establishment of a national unity government and the provision of security throughout the country's territory in order to prevent Daesh from gaining ground.
It will be fundamental for everyone to give absolute priority to the Libya issue, which risks becoming the next emergency.
The editor of the Pan-African newswire, Abayomi Azakiwe, says the current instability in Libya is actually the major factor allowing ISIL to gain momentum there.
Many of their fighters are relocating to Libya, where there's a huge power vacuum. What has happened in Libya is a direct result of the intervention of the Pentagon and NATO through air power, through military advisors, and through proxy armies to further the destabilization process that is taking place throughout North Africa as well as the Middle East. In that city, the basic infrastructure has been broken down. There is a huge presence of poverty. So therefore, the Islamic State, which is well funded by elements within the Middle East, elements within NATO, and they are able to step into these political situations.
As coalition attacks on ISIL-controlled oil sites intensify, militants are being forced to look not only for a new stronghold, but also for new sources of income. The Russian Drug Control Service has warned that the terrorists already make some $1 billion a year from selling Afghan opium. It's also claimed half of all the heroin supplied to Europe is being transferred by IS militants. Abayomi Azakiwe again says amid local and external help, ISIL is diversifying its assets, but not out of choice.
It's quite obvious that Turkey and other states within the region had been funneling resources to ISIS. Now, where the situation has changed, the lines of supply has been severely disrupted. So therefore, it is not surprising that ISIS would be involved in other illicit forms of revenue generation. After the United States intervened in Afghanistan, the production of poppies and consequently opium and other forms of opiate drugs flourished. This so-called war on terrorism is in fact fueling trafficking of illegal drugs.
Well, apart from the drugs trade, there's another alarming source of revenue among ISIL fighters, which is that of slavery and human trafficking. RT talked to some Syrians who did manage to flee Islamic State.
They forced women to be fully covered and never show any part of the body. However, they made their slaves strip in order to sell them. Women are not allowed to show anything. If someone was caught on the streets during prayer, she would be given 100 lashes.
They cut off heads and kidnapped girls and women and took them to Raqqa. What were the slaves guilty of? This is a sin.
They stole property and destroyed churches. Our Christian sisters were seized. Some of them were taken hostage and held for ransom.
Still to come in the program, here on RT International, the picture of a woman in a hijab painted on a shop's wall, dividing a community in one small Swedish town. The artists ended up having to change their work after their employers called it unacceptable. Plus, security fears are cited as the German city of Hamburg votes against hosting the Olympics. We'll bring you details on that and the rest of your top world headlines in just a minute.